My wife cheated with her boss, stole $250, $0 from our joint account to fund their affair, and now she's trying to legally kick me out of our house. What do I do? I never thought I'd find myself in a situation where my wife, Lisa, would turn out to be nothing like the woman I married. We had a pretty good life, or at least I thought so. She was always a little high maintenance, demanding, but I figured that was just her personality. We'd been married for 8 years, and honestly I believed we had a solid, if not perfect, relationship. Until the day I stumbled across something that shattered that illusion completely. It started with small things. Lisa's phone started ringing at odd hours, late at night, and she'd always brush it off like it was nothing. She'd get defensive if I asked who it was, claiming it was just work or a friend. But I noticed her messages were getting more frequent, and her responses were hurried, even secretive. I'd catch her slipping her phone into her purse when I entered the room. Nothing obvious, just enough to make me suspicious. Still, I didn't want to believe she could do something so hurtful. Then came the night I decided to check her phone when she went to bed early. I found a string of messages, flirty, suggestive exchanges with her boss, Mark. It wasn't just innocent work talk. It was clear they were having an affair. My stomach dropped, and my hands clenched the phone so tightly I thought I might break it. There were references to secret meetings, plans to meet after hours, and even a few explicit messages that made my blood boil. I couldn't believe the woman I trusted was cheating on me with her boss. What made it worse was the financial side of things. I always thought we were doing okay, but after digging through our bank statements, I found out she stolen almost $250, $0 from our joint account. Just disappeared like it was nothing. I couldn't understand how she managed to do that without me noticing, until I looked closer. There were transfers to a private account, payments for hotels, dinners, and even gifts. It was obvious she'd been funneling money to fund her affair. The betrayal hit harder than I expected. It wasn't just the cheating, it was the lying, the theft. The complete loss of trust. I was furious, devastated, and feeling completely. I'd always been a straightforward guy, loyal, and now I felt like I'd been played for a fool. The worst part was realizing she was now trying to manipulate the situation to her advantage. She started acting innocent, denying everything, claiming I was paranoid or jealous. She even accused me of spying on her, saying I was overreacting. But I had proof, and I wasn't going to let her gaslight me into believing I was the crazy one. That's when I knew I had to confront her. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I needed answers, and I needed to decide what to do next. The thing was, I wasn't just angry about the affair. I was furious about the money, about how she'd lied and stolen from us, and about how she was trying to turn this around on me. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut, and I knew my life was about to change forever. The confrontation happened one evening when I couldn't hold it in anymore. I had the evidence spread out on the kitchen table, screenshots of the messages, bank statements with the transfers, hotel receipts. I sat her down, my hands trembling, and laid everything out in front of her. Her face twisted into a sneer as she looked at the proof, then she rolled her eyes and scoffed. "Oh, come on, Mark and I are just friends," she said, brushing it off like it was no big deal. "You're overthinking everything. You're just jealous because I work hard and I deserve some fun. It's not like I cheated on you with some random guy. Mark's my boss. It's just sex, and honestly, I don't see what the big deal is." I stared at her, stunned. That was her excuse, just sex. She was trying to make me feel guilty for catching her. I couldn't believe how she was lying so effortlessly, like she thought she could spin her way out of this mess. I felt my blood boiling. How could she be so callous? How could she steal that much money from us? It was like she didn't even care about the damage she'd done. I told her I knew everything. The affair, the money, everything. Her face didn't change. She just looked annoyed, like I was bothering her. That's when I saw her eyes flicker with something darker, like she was planning her next move. She started saying I was paranoid, that I'd always been controlling, that I never trusted her. She claimed she was just trying to keep the peace, that she was stressed out and needed comfort, and that I was overreacting. That's when I snapped. I told her I was done. Done with the lies, the betrayal, the theft. I told her I never wanted to see her again if she kept lying to my face. She still tried to deny everything, but it was useless. She knew I had the evidence, and I knew she was lying. I felt a mix of rage, heartbreak, and a deep sense of betrayal. I'd always believed in honesty and loyalty. Now I was left with nothing but a broken trust and a future I didn't recognize. The emotional impact hit me hard. I felt like I'd been punched repeatedly. I loved her once, or at least I thought I did. Now I just felt empty. How could she do this? How could she take our life savings and throw it all away on some affair? I kept replaying everything in my mind, her sneaking around, the money transfers, her lies, and I realized that I couldn't stay in this marriage anymore. Not after she destroyed everything that mattered to me. But even as I made that decision, I knew it wasn't going to get easier. The anger was still there, but so was the sadness, knowing that the woman I loved had turned into someone I barely recognized. I couldn't wrap my head around how she thought she could get away with it all, how she thought she could lie and steal and then just pretend everything was fine. I was angry at her, yes, but I was also hurt. Deep down, I felt betrayed on every level imaginable. In the days that followed, I started thinking about what to do next. I knew I had to protect myself, my finances, and my rights. I wanted justice, revenge, even, because I wasn't going to let her walk away with everything she'd taken from us. I was already planning my next move, knowing that she would try to manipulate the situation, maybe even try to kick me out of the house, which she was already hinting at. I realized I had to act fast and smart because she was no longer the woman I thought I married. She was someone else entirely, and I was left trying to pick up the pieces of what felt like a life shattered beyond repair. After that night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept racing over everything. Her lies, the stolen money, the betrayal. I kept thinking about how she had always been so bitchy, so demanding, but I never thought she'd cross this line. It was like I was living in some nightmare I couldn't wake up from. The more I thought about her justifying her actions, the more I realized she was trying to manipulate me even now, acting innocent when she knew damn well what she had done. I decided I needed to get legal advice. I couldn't just confront her and hope for the best. She was already trying to spin her way out. I found a lawyer who specialized in family law, and I laid everything out: her affair, the stolen money, her attempts to kick me out of the house. The lawyer listened carefully, then told me I had grounds to contest her claims, especially since she was trying to use the house as her weapon. The next few days were a blur of calling lawyers, gathering evidence, and trying to figure out my next move. I also started secretly recording conversations, just in case she tried to deny her threats or manipulate the situation further. I knew she'd be scheming behind my back, probably trying to find a way to turn the situation to her advantage. That bitch always had a plan, and I wasn't going to let her win without fighting back. Meanwhile, she kept up her act of innocence, acting like I was the crazy one. She'd come home, pretend to be the perfect wife, cooking dinner, acting like everything was normal. But I saw through her. I knew she was trying to gaslight me to make me doubt myself. She'd even accuse me of being paranoid, of not trusting her. The nerve. She was the one sneaking around, stealing from us, and now she was trying to turn the tables. One day she told me she was thinking about leaving, and that she might even take the house if she could. She claimed she deserved it because she was the one who kept everything together, which made me laugh bitterly. She was the one who destroyed everything: our trust, our savings, our relationship. But she was already planning her escape, trying to leave me with nothing. I knew I couldn't let that happen. I had to stand my ground. I started making plans to protect myself financially. I transferred some money into a separate account, just in case she tried to drain the rest of our funds or claim she was entitled to everything. I made copies of all the financial documents, the proof of her theft, and the messages. I also contacted a divorce lawyer, just to see what my options were. I wasn't ready to give up, but I knew I had to be prepared for whatever she threw at me next. The most frustrating part was her trying to act like she was the victim. She'd call me controlling or accuse me of being paranoid, but I knew the truth. I knew she'd been lying from the start. Every time she tried to gaslight me, I felt a surge of anger. How dare she try to make me doubt myself when I had all the evidence? How dare she play the victim now? It was infuriating, but it also made me more determined to fight back. I realized I had to get ahead of her to outsmart her. She was manipulative, used to getting her way, but I wasn't going to let her walk all over me. I had to protect my rights, my money, and my dignity. I was already planning to file for divorce, to get everything out in the open. I knew she'd fight me tooth and nail, but I was ready. I had enough evidence to prove her guilt, and I was going to make sure she paid for what she'd done. Deep down, I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. Relief because I finally knew the truth, and dread because I knew this was only the beginning of a long, ugly battle. But I was done being the victim. I was tired of her lies, her schemes, her betrayal. From this point on, I was fighting for myself, for what was left of my dignity, and for the future I deserved. The legal process moved quickly once I had all my evidence organized. I filed for divorce, citing her infidelity and financial misconduct as the main reasons. I also made sure to get a court order to freeze any further transfers from our joint account, just in case she tried to drain more money or manipulate the situation further. The lawyer warned me she'd probably try to spin things to her favor, maybe even claim I was abusive or controlling, but I knew better. I had all the proof, texts, bank statements, receipts, and I was ready to fight. Meanwhile, Lisa's attitude shifted. She became more aggressive, more bitchy. She'd yell at me, call me paranoid, accuse me of ruining her life. She even went as far as trying to turn the kids against me, saying I was trying to take everything away from her. That was the final straw. I wasn't going to let her manipulate the situation anymore. I sat the kids down and explained that their mother was making some bad choices, but I would always be there for them. I wanted them to see the truth, not her lies. One day, she showed up at the house with a lawyer of her own, claiming she had rights to the property because she was the primary resident. She argued she was entitled to the house because she'd been the one holding everything together, and that I was just some controlling husband who didn't trust her. I couldn't believe her audacity. I had to remind her that she'd stolen from us, lied to my face, and had an affair with her boss. The judge wasn't buying her excuses, but it was clear she was trying to use her charm and bitchiness to get what she wanted. I also learned she had already been talking to a real estate agent about selling the house. I knew I had to act fast. I approached my lawyer about filing for a temporary restraining order to prevent her from selling or transferring any assets without my approval. I couldn't let her walk away with the house or the money she stole. I was furious, but I stayed calm, knowing that patience and preparation were my best weapons. The more I dug into her financial dealings, the more I uncovered. She'd been funneling money into secret accounts, buying expensive gifts for her boss, and even setting aside some of the stolen cash for herself. It was clear she had no intention of stopping her schemes. I started to realize that her plan was to disappear with the money and leave me with nothing. That realization fueled my resolve. I had to get ahead of her to make sure she didn't destroy what was left of our life together. At the same time, I couldn't help feeling a mix of anger and sadness. I'd loved her once, or at least I thought I did. Now I was just angry she'd turned into this manipulative, selfish person. Every time I thought about the money she stole, the lies she told, it made my stomach churn. I kept asking myself how someone I trusted could do something so cruel, but I also knew I couldn't dwell on that. I had to focus on protecting myself and setting things right legally. As the weeks went by, I started to see the cracks in her facade. She'd lash out, try to guilt-trip me, and even threaten to ruin me if I didn't back off. But I was prepared. I had everything documented, and I wasn't going to let her manipulate her way out of this. I knew she was desperate, cornered, and that made her dangerous. Still, I refused to be intimidated. I was done being her victim. It was time to fight back and take control of my life again. The legal battle was brutal but necessary. I stayed vigilant, making sure every document was in order, every call recorded, every piece of evidence secured. My lawyer kept telling me to stay calm, to be patient, because Lisa was already pulling every trick in the book to sway the court in her favor. She was calling in favors, trying to paint herself as the victim, claiming I was abusive or controlling, anything to deflect from her own guilt. but I knew better. I had the proof, and I wasn't about to let her manipulate the system. One day she showed up at the house, flanked by her new lawyer with a sneer that made my blood boil. She argued she had rights to the house because she'd been living there longer, that she was the primary caregiver, and that she deserved a share of the assets. She even threw in some tears, acting like I was the bad guy. I just looked at her and said, "You stole from us, lied to my face, and had an affair with your boss. You don't get to play innocent." Now, the judge saw right through her theatrics and issued an order to freeze the house's sale and any further transfer of assets. Meanwhile, I made sure to document every interaction, every threat, every lie she told. I knew she was desperate and dangerous, and I couldn't let her get away with anything. I also started preparing for the worst, thinking about how I'd protect myself if she tried to turn things around, or if she tried to accuse me of something I didn't do. I hired a private investigator to keep tabs on her, just in case she was planning to run or stash more money away. I couldn't trust her anymore. She'd already proven she'd do anything to save herself. Her behavior grew more erratic. She'd call me names, yell at me in front of the kids, and try to guilt-trip them into taking her side. But I stayed firm, keeping my distance and focusing on the legal process. I knew she was trying to manipulate the kids, to make them see her as the victim, but I also knew I had to be their anchor. I sat them down and explained that Mom was making some bad choices, but that I loved them and would always be there for them no matter what. It was hard watching her try to turn their minds against me, but I refused to let her win that game. The financial mess she'd left us in was staggering. She drained almost all of our savings, leaving me with a mountain of debt and a shattered sense of security. But I was determined to rebuild. I started working extra hours, cutting unnecessary expenses, and trying to get back on my feet. I also reached out to a financial advisor to help me sort through everything. I knew I needed to be smart. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming my life and making sure she didn't get away with everything she'd done. Throughout it all, I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. I kept asking myself how someone I loved and trusted could turn into such a manipulative, selfish person. The anger simmered just beneath the surface, but I also felt a strange sense of relief. Finally, I was taking control of the situation. I was fighting for what was rightfully mine, and I was going to see this through too. The end. I knew the road ahead would be tough, but I was done being the victim. From now on, it was about standing up for myself and making sure she paid for what she'd done. The court date finally arrived, and I felt a mixture of exhaustion and determination. I knew Lisa would pull out all the stops, more lies, more manipulation, but I had everything in my favor. My lawyer presented the evidence of her affair, her theft, and her attempts to claim the house. She tried to deny everything at first, but when faced with the mountain of proof, her facade crumbled. The judge wasn't convinced by her tears or her sob stories. In the end, I was awarded full custody of the house, the remaining funds from our joint account, and a restraining order that prevented her from selling or transferring any assets without my approval. Watching her leave the courthouse, her face twisted in anger and frustration, I felt a strange sense of relief. It hadn't been easy, and I'd lost a lot: trust, money, the person I thought was my wife, but I gained my dignity back. I realized I'd been living in a nightmare, but now was finally waking up. The betrayal had been brutal, but it had also opened my eyes to who she really was. No more illusions, no more lies. I could finally start to rebuild my life, piece by piece. In the weeks that followed, I focused on healing. I moved into a new place, started therapy to deal with the emotional scars, and worked on regaining my financial footing. I also made sure to keep the kids safe and supported, telling them the truth in age-appropriate ways, that sometimes adults make bad choices, but that I would always be there for them. Seeing their resilience helped me stay strong, even on the darkest days. Looking back, I learned some harsh lessons. Trust is fragile, and some betrayals cut deeper than you can imagine. But I also learned that revenge isn't about hurting her back. It's about reclaiming your life and dignity. I found that standing up for myself, no matter how hard, was the only way to truly move on. I also realized that sometimes You have to lose everything to see the truth clearly and start over. Now, I'm rebuilding, slowly but surely. I've learned to trust my instincts again, to recognize red flags early, and to never ignore the signs of betrayal. I've also come to understand that some people are just selfish and manipulative, and the best thing you can do is walk away before they ruin you entirely. My advice to anyone in a similar situation: gather your proof, stay calm, and fight for what's right. Don't let anyone gaslight you or make you doubt yourself. The truth will come out, and you'll come out stronger on the other side. As hard as it was, I'm grateful for what I've learned. I've grown tougher, wiser, and more aware of what I deserve. I may have lost a lot, but I've gained clarity and a new beginning. Life goes on, and I'm finally ready to move forward, free from the lies, the theft, and the betrayal. And I'll never forget that feeling of finally taking back control. That's the real victory.